Oxygen. Chapter 13. The Gift of Power. 15th day of the second month, 700th year. Over the 2 years, Freta and Dragatu saw each other whenever they could. Dragatu shared his family's abundance with Freta, and this meant she didn't need to hunt alone in the hills or work as tirelessly. With their free time, they helped people and spent a lot of time digging at the ore pits to give away what they found. They also went to the hills every 3 months to check the water source for repairs and hunted together for fun. Another love story took place in these 2 years, and it was a surprise to everyone. Eunyalus returned home one day and told his family he was engaged to be married. The family met Tercia, a farmer's daughter, and everyone commented on how similar they were in both looks and personality. The wedding date had not been set, as they had to wait until they were both 18, the age of adults. This had recently happened for the triplets, but Tercia was still not of age. On their 18th birthday, the brothers were fully accepted as men, and as was tradition, they celebrated with a large feast and received many gifts. Onrus gifted Dragatu with some elaborate hunting knives. The day after the feast, Helana gathered her 3 sons together. She revealed the existence of the Book of Prophecy to Eunyalus and Phenon, and reminded Dragatu of it. She explained that as Eunyalus was engaged, he would inherit it after he was married, and would be allowed to read it. Dragatu casually brushed this off, remembering how he had read it when he shouldn't have, but not recalling what it said. He promised once more to protect it, but gave it no more thought. His only concern was for the Book of Law and trying to help the people. It was the part of his promises to his father he focused on, as the Book of Prophecy had seemed a fool's errand. The sun was high, casting only faint shadows around the water channels as Dragatu walked alone across the desert to the hills. It was strange not having Freta with him, but Jonas was ill, and she had stayed to take care of him. About halfway to the hills, he suddenly heard a soft but commanding female voice. It felt like water, gentle and strong, as it whispered to him, "Dragatu." He looked around. There was no one there. Shaking his head, he kept walking. After a few paces, he heard it again. This time it was louder. "Dragatu." The voice sounded familiar, and he turned on the spot. For a 3rd time, the voice called to him, "Dragatu." "Who's there?" Dragatu called out. He wondered if the heat of the desert was affecting him. Suddenly, there was a blinding flash of light. As his eyes refocused, he took several steps back. There, in front of him, was the tallest man he had ever seen, well over 2 meters tall. The man had wavy blonde hair that was mostly covered by a strange hat-like object. It shone in the sun, and was made from a metal Dragatu didn't recognize. The hat-like object covered everything but the man's eyes, parts of his cheeks, and his chin. It was radiant and beautiful, but it was the eyes that drew Dragatu's attention the most. The irises were not single blue or green or brown. They were a mixture of vibrant and deep red, green, orange, and blue, and the separate colors danced around each other like smoke. Dragatu drew his own eyes away to survey the rest of the man, and saw more strange dark yellow apparel like the hat. There was a metal shirt that covered the front and back, and it was cut off at the shoulders. Other items consisted of metal sleeves on the forearms, a metal skirt that went to the knees, some metal on the shins, and some on the sandals that covered the whole foot. Dragatu's gaze lingered on what lay at the man's hip. It was like a hunting knife, but far longer, almost as long as the man's arm. It was made out of the same dark yellow metal and had 7 stones in the blade. The stones were of all different colors. The closest to the point was red, followed by green, orange, blue, purple, yellow, and lastly white at the hilt. Dragatu began to wonder what this longer hunting knife was for, and what kind of animal it would be used to kill. But before Dragatu could think any more, the man spoke. "Greetings, Dragatu." Who are you?" Dragatu stammered. "I'm a messenger sent from the Creator." Dragatu dropped to his knees and bowed his head. but the man called to him, "Rise and defend yourself." Dragatu snapped his head up, his face tensing with shock. The man was taking large steps towards him and drawing the weapon. Was this a dream or some bizarre hallucination? Dragatu had no idea, but instinct took over. He drew his hunting knives and readied himself. The man closed the gap and bore down viciously, swinging the weapon at Dragatu's head. Dragatu ducked and sidestepped nimbly. The giant man's side was now exposed. Dragatu attacked, but the man was too quick. He brushed aside the blow, the metal on his arm protecting him. Dragatu jumped back as another attack came. Why am I being attacked? Dragatu wondered, in the split second of reprieve. The thought vanished. There was no time to think. He had to survive. He started the circle. His attacker followed, the weapon stretched out accusingly like a long pointed finger. Dragatu took several steps forward, but had to dodge an attack. He blocked the second, using both knives. The force nearly knocked him off his feet, but he saw an opening as the man drew the weapon back. Dragatu lunged for the unprotected neck. Yet once again, the man was too fast. Mid-attack, Dragatu saw the counter out of the corner of his eye. He braced himself for death, his own arm still moving towards the man's neck. Suddenly, he felt himself thud on the soft sand. He opened his eyes to find himself lying on his back several meters away from the man. Enough, the messenger bellowed. Dragatu lay there stunned, looking up. Out of nowhere, he heard the female voice again. I know this is confusing. All I can say is remember choice. Choice, Dragatu repeated, no less confused. He looked around, and there was no woman, just the man. You are a skilled fighter, Dragatu, the messenger said, cutting through his thoughts. Your skill, determination, and courage are commendable. These are qualities that could make you a great leader. Dragatu staggered to his feet and stared. So many questions circled his mind. Almost as if the thoughts had been read, the man continued. You must have many questions. Firstly, I am a messenger from the Creator. I am here because you have been chosen, Dragatu. You have been a great helper of the people. Your work in providing leadership for the Water Project was highly commendable. From a young age, you have desired to help people and worked hard to achieve your goals. You have a lot of potential and can achieve a lot of good for the people. However, I must warn you, sometimes your desire to help has the wrong intentions behind it. You must learn to help others for that purpose alone. Think about this, but remember that your efforts have been good. Now that has been said, it is time to reveal why I have been sent. I am here to give you a gift that you can use to help the people. With it, you can guide them to make better choices and be an example of all that is good. Before I offer you this gift, I need to remind you of what is written in the Book of Law. Remember that the ground you walk on was created by the Creator. It is a spherical body, much like a round stone, with moss growing on it. It is much more, but this will help you understand. In many ways, you and the people are the moss. It is known as a planet or world. It has been created for you to live on. It contains life and houses life. I want you to think of the night sky, Dragatu. Think of the stars. Out there are worlds similar to yours, and many very different from yours. There are many creations, but above all, humans are the most important to the Creator. I am going to show you many of these creations that exist in worlds like yours. Some of these worlds have humans on them, but some do not. Many of the creations you will see couldn't be imagined unless shown to you. Each has many unique qualities, and it's up to you to see those qualities. You will then be able to pick the creation you think has the qualities that will help the people on your world. Are you ready to accept this great gift and honor? Dragatu had stood there, staring, slowly accepting what was happening, but it was overwhelming. Finally, he took hold of his thoughts. I'll be able to help the people more than I could before. I accept this great gift, he said reverently, but with a hint of excitement. The man nodded and walked forward, bent down and placed his hand sideways on Dragatu's forehead, then brought it down to cover Dragatu's eyes. There was another sudden flash of light. The flash of light faded, and Dragatu saw the night sky and stars all around him, as if he was floating amongst them. Looking around, he tried to find his legs and arms, but there was nothing, as though all that existed was his ability to see. Suddenly, a small round object appeared. As it did, it grew larger and larger, until it almost took up his whole vision, and then it stopped. He knew it was a world like the messenger had spoken of. From the bottom, it began to peel and unfold as one piece, like a fruit skin, or a ball wrapped in cloth, and it spread out like the top of a circular table. As it did, Dragatu began to move and looked at it from a bird's eye view. Then suddenly he rushed down towards it, approaching as if he was going to crash into the surface, but stopped just above it, turning to view it as if he was standing on the surface. He then found he could move by himself, moving as if he could fly at any speed he wanted. Whipping and weaving amongst the surface of the world, he saw that it was a damper and wetter than his own, and there were a lot of forest covering the land. He saw humans and many creatures he didn't recognize. A huge creature caught his attention. It was bigger than a house, and it had 5 long snake-like necks attached to a big body that had 4 legs. On the end of each neck there was a narrow horse-like head that was a blue-green colour, just like the rest of the body. It had a tail that was long, and this creature was a great threat to the people. Dragatu saw that it took a lot of people to defend themselves, and this was because the creature could spit a poison substance from its heads, and it burned the skin of the humans. They had learned to defend themselves well, and learned to use juices of strange plants to cover arrows and poison these creatures. The creature's skin was also waterproof, and the people wore the skins as protection in the very wet climate. Once the curiosity had passed, Dragatu continued moving rapidly through the world's surface, but nothing else caught his attention. As he thought about wanting to see the next world, this one began to pull away. He lost the ability to control his movement, and viewed it from a bird's eye view again, not able to tell if he moved away from the world, or the world moved away from him. The surface then folded back to create a sphere, and it moved away, getting smaller and smaller. Dragatu waited amongst the stars and black space, and another sphere approached. The same experience occurred as before. The same process repeated over and over with each world. Eventually, he saw a creature that grabbed his attention more than the others. It was a very dry world. There were areas of plants and forests, but they were few. This world didn't have any humans on it, but had ferocious beasts, like giant lizards. Some were bigger than many houses, and some were on 2 legs and ran fast. Then others had long necks and large bodies with 4 legs. The creature that caught Dragatu's attention was the main predator on this world, and it had wings like a bat and 4 legs. It also had a long tail and long neck. The head was crowned with horns, and it had fangs that were sharper than knives. What really caught his attention was that it could breathe fire. The first time he saw this, he was filled with wonder and awe. This creature had such strength and power. He put it straight to the top of his list, thinking of ways the creature's abilities could help the people. Worlds continued to flash before him. Millions upon millions of people populated some, and some were covered with incredible buildings that reached to the heavens. Others had small populations with very few buildings, the people living in tents as Dragatu's people once had. And others even had humans that flew around the skies in metal creations, and some even used these to fly amongst the stars. It was almost more than Dragatu's mind could take. Finally, no more worlds appeared, and the stars went out, and all was black. He was unsure of how much time had passed. In the darkness, all that existed was thought. Some worlds he had forgotten already, and after some more immeasurable time, others vanished from his recollection. With this process, his mind began to feel normal and less overwhelmed. Most of what he could remember was the creature he had chosen, and only a few of the planets he had seen. Suddenly, he felt something on his face, and light crept into his eyes. His world slowly came back into focus as the messenger withdrew his hand. Dragatu fell to the floor as he felt his body again, and he breathed deeply, propped up on all fours. The messenger spoke as Dragatu slowly staggered to his feet. Now that you have seen these things, it is time for you to decide. Pick the creation whose characteristics you think will best serve others. These characteristics will be given to you, and you can use them in a way that you think is best. Which one do you choose, Dragatu? Dragatu had chosen, and didn't need any time to debate his choice. The creature that was strong and could breathe fire is the one I choose. I believe the strength it would give me would allow me to be a better leader, and I would be able to use it to help the people. If I were stronger, I would be able to work hard every day to help more people. Also, the Book of Law says that fire allowed the people to be happy. It gave them light in darkness, warmth, protection from animals, and the ability to cook food, make tools, pans, metals, and many other things. If I could make fire in some way like the creature did, I would use it to give light, protection, and make things for the people. The creature is known as the dragon, the messenger said, and held his hands out flat. A miniature dragon suddenly appeared on them. Is this what you choose? Yes, Dragatu said, smiling with excitement. This shall be your gift. It will give you great physical strength, and you will be able to create fire with your thoughts. Dragatu repeated the last part in amazement. In his mind, create fire with my thoughts? This is a great and powerful gift, the gleaming armored messenger said. You will be able to focus on any object you can see, and as long as the material can burn, and you have enough strength, then it will. This gift will require different levels of energy from you depending on the material you are trying to burn. You will have to eat and drink a lot because you will use up energy to perform the fire gift. The gift is like your muscles. The more you use it, the easier it will be to use. At first, it will make you very tired, but in time, and with use, it will become easier. The material you burn must also be in sight, and it will only work within a 20-meter radius from where you stand. Do you still desire this gift? I do, Dragatu repeated. The messenger stepped forward, putting his hand on the side of Dragatu's head. Dragatu felt a burning sensation spread all over his body. It started at his heart and spread throughout his whole body. He felt like he was on fire, yet it didn't hurt. It was more like being consumed by positive energy. Finally, his vision went black, and as his awareness returned, he found himself lying on the floor. The messenger knelt beside him and helped him up. Dragatu noticed the messenger didn't look as big as he had. He then looked at the floor and saw it was further away. He was taller. He looked at his feet, legs, torso, hands, and arms and saw he was also larger and more muscular than he had been. You have noticed one of your changes. There is another change, but you will notice this in time. There are a few other consequences we must discuss. The first is that when you have children, your first child will inherit the gift when you die. This will only happen when they are 18 or over. Secondly, your name is now a title, which will belong to you and those who inherit your gift. Each person who has the gift will be known as the Dragatu. Lastly, you will not be able to speak of the things that I have shown you. You can tell people you have a gift from the Creator, and that it will be passed on to your children. But that is all. If you try to say more, your tongue will not let you. The only people you can talk openly with are your two brothers. You may also write in your journal that I have visited you, and that this gift came from the dragon, that it will be passed on, and how it feels, but not anything more of what you have seen. Do you understand? There was a pause. Dragatu was so caught up in the wonder that he failed to register much of what had been said. I understand, he said quickly, registering the question, but not much else. Good. Remember that everything you do is a choice, Dragatu. Choose well. As the final words ran through Dragatu's mind, there was a last flash of blinding light. When his sight returned, the messenger was gone. He was alone. He stood still for a few moments, thinking about it all, and wondered how much time had passed. It was still daylight. Putting his hand up to shade his eyes, he looked to the sun. It was still in the same spot it had been when the messenger had appeared. He wondered how that could be, and shook his head, guessing he would never be able to understand. Dropping his hand, he looked down at the ground and crouched, balancing himself as he adjusted to his increased size. He decided to let himself fall backwards and sat on the sandy ground, deciding to write in his journal. After writing all he could about the encounter, in which he noted the weakness of the gift, he sat thinking. A lot of the last parts of the messenger's speech rose to the surface. Why is it okay for me to to tell my brothers about what I've seen, and no one else, he wondered. It would be good to have someone to talk to, but why them? Why not Freta? So much I don't understand. He sat thinking, but couldn't find an answer. Guess it doesn't matter. I have the gift, and will be able to lead the way Father always knew I would. I will be able to do more for the people. I wonder how this fire gift works. The messenger didn't explain that fully. He said with my thoughts. I guess I have to concentrate on what I want to heat or burn. He looked around, but there was nothing except his equipment, and he needed that. I'll have to wait until I reach the hills and find some wood. Other thoughts then popped into his mind. Whose was the woman's voice? Was that the Creator? Is the Creator a woman? The Book of Law just says we were made in the Creator's image. How does she have the power to create worlds? Whoever she was, why hadn't she said more? I don't understand. Why had the voice said? Remember choice. Why do I need to think about this? He continued to think, but struggled to find answers. After a lot of speculation, he shook his head frantically. This is pointless. I don't know why more wasn't explained. There's no point in wasting time when I can go use my gift. He went to say something as a conclusion of his thoughts, but found he couldn't speak. Confused, he suddenly remembered what the messenger had said. Instead, he said it in his mind. If that woman's voice was yours, Creator, thank you for the gift. He then stood quickly, excitement taking over as he thought about the fire gift. He put the journal in his pack, slung the pack over his shoulder, and began to walk as fast as he could. It took some time to get used to his new size and strength, and as he journeyed, he burst out laughing every now and then, unable to contain his joy and amazement.